In Port Moody, British Columbia, the Vancouver Drug Squad raids a house looking for marijuana. Not a few lonely plants in someone's window, but a secret garden in their basement.
Wow.
$100,000 worth of marijuana, grown with the latest technology.
Beautiful buds. Oh man, look at those. Those are just gorgeous. Sticky.
Sergeant Pete Fraser used to look for dope imported from Colombia or Jamaica. Today he might find stuff just as good in any basement. In this case, just a few blocks from the Port Moody police station. 90 plants, enough for 10 kilos of marijuana. And another 500 baby plants just starting out. Fraser and his fellow drug squad officers have seen an explosion of hydroponics, indoor marijuana cultivation.
We've run into organized biker gangs that are growing and selling and storing and importing marijuana. We've run into families, a mother and father routine with children growing marijuana to make money. We've run into drug addicts, hardcore heroin addicts growing marijuana. It's the whole spectrum.
Until 1985, Tom grew marijuana indoors. Now a businessman, we filmed him in disguise.
When I started it, very few people even knew that it was possible to do it. Now it's with all these hydroponic stores all over the bloody place and magazines promoting growing of marijuana indoors. I would estimate that maybe 4 in every 100 people are growing marijuana. I would say that's a fairly fair estimate.
Marijuana became the choice of a new generation during the 1960s, when it was hip to turn on, tune in, and drop out, according to drug guru Timothy Leary.
Between 15 and 20% of our college students are regularly using mind-opening chemicals such as marijuana and LSD.
Although illegal since the 1920s, marijuana gained an underground acceptance similar to that enjoyed by alcohol during Prohibition. Government statistics say that today, 5 million Canadians have smoked dope.
More people smoke pot than eat peanut butter sandwiches, I would say.
Over the years, British Columbia has been the headquarters in Canada for the cultivation of marijuana. In fact, periodically they even find plots of the stuff over in Vancouver's Stanley Park. Part of the reason is the weather out here, part of it the social climate. But these days, thanks to hydroponic growth techniques, it is possible to raise marijuana indoors anywhere in the country. This is a grow room, a secret garden hidden in a basement. The buzz of the electrical equipment, the hum of the fans, these are the sounds of hydroponics. Central to any grow room is the metal halide light, 1,000 watts, producing the equivalent sunlight and warmth of a tropical jungle. Under this light, watered by a hydroponic drip system providing the right balance of nutrients, the air enriched by carbon dioxide gas, the odor of the plants discreetly vented up the chimney, marijuana goes from seedling to harvest in about 3 months. And Tom, like most, started small.
You've got a lot of growers who do it exactly like that. They've got the little room, they grow a few plants for themselves and their buddies. It's like making your own wine. And then they invite everybody over and say, hey, plants are done, let's smoke some of this shit and have a good time, right? Then again, there's a lot of people who start like that. That's how I started. And they start like that. And they go, geez, I just grew myself $3,000 worth of marijuana.
That's how it often begins. Using hydroponics and halide lighting, it's possible to produce marijuana year-round, up to 4 crops annually, compared to 1 outdoors. In a commercial grow room like this one, with 3 growing areas, it's possible to have a crop maturing every month. The supply of marijuana has become a cottage industry.
We're running into a lot of homegrown marijuana at the street level, the 1 gram and less level.
Sergeant Pete Fraser of the Vancouver Police Drug Squad.
Well, if you consider that each mature marijuana plant has a yield, a smokable product of about $1,000 street value, it doesn't take much to figure out if you have 30 plants and you're getting 3 or 4 crops a year at $30,000 per crop, tax-free, that's pretty big money.
The secret gardens are not easy to find. Last June, firemen were called to a blaze in the basement of this South Vancouver house. They and the neighbors were shocked to discover that the reclusive tenants had been growing a crop of marijuana down there. Fraser and his drug squad detectives were surprised too, and it was only a faulty propane tank that had given them away. And that's the problem that the police face. Hydropot, as the growers call it, is virtually undetectable. Vancouver police estimate that for every indoor garden they find, there are 49 they do not.
It's frustrating, yes, because we know that we don't have the time, the manpower, the facilities to catch them all. We're not going to catch them all. We're going to catch as many as we can, and they're a lot of fun.
This past summer, the Vancouver Drug Squad raided all the indoor grow rooms they could find.
Here's another dust.
A regular dead?
The international war on drugs has made it tougher to smuggle marijuana into the country at a time when technology has made it easier for a lot of small growers to pick up the slack.
Picking peaches.
It's expected that within a few years, 3/4 of the marijuana in North America will be grown secretly in basements and garages, found everywhere. This operation is in one of Vancouver's most fashionable neighborhoods.
Marcel, can I get you to do these two because they're...
In 1986, police in British Columbia investigated 400 marijuana cultivation cases. In 1987, there were more than 600. The trend this year indicates that 1988 will be another record year. A lot of work goes into putting together a hydroponic garden. And for police, it's also a lot of work to seize the plants and the usual mountain of equipment that goes with them, all of which has to be tagged and kept for evidence in court.
These are some of the best records I've ever seen.
Upstairs, records indicate a setup cost of $10,000 and expected proceeds of $250,000 after just 11 months.
That's probably 10 pounds, $3,000 a pound.
You get $30,000?
Pay for your house. These are excellent, excellent buds. You know, that's a very good example of a bud.
The going rate today is up to $3,500 a pound for top-grade marijuana, even more in smaller lots. Little wonder that many growers may start for personal use, but are soon supplying for profit.
I've seen piles of money 3 feet high, made out of $50 and $100 bills. I've seen duffel bags full of money. I've seen so much money that if you lose a few $100 and you can't find it right away, you just go, what the hell? I've seen a lot of money. There's a lot of money in that business, and this is why all these people are doing it now.
There's nothing illegal about the equipment you use to grow marijuana indoors. You can find everything you need at a hydroponic gardening store, like this one in Surrey, BC, just outside Vancouver. Lighting equipment like halide and sodium bulbs, reflectors, timers, aerators, nutrients, carbon dioxide. They'll grow African violets, or tomatoes, or a crop of high-grade marijuana. And what's more, you can get it all by mail order. There are magazines like High Times, loaded with growing information, the latest in avoiding detection, the Trans High report on dope prices around the world, and a lot of ads for equipment. High Times also lobbies for legalization. How-to books are readily available as well. We bought these over the counter without a problem. And while a new federal anti-drug paraphernalia law is attempting to control this field, it's been criticized for being vague and is yet untested in the courts. In the U.S., with a similar law, freedom of the press was judged to be more important, and literature like this is still unrestricted. And what's more, when it comes to the equipment, no one admits to growing marijuana. They all say they're simply trying to raise prize vegetables.
And they know you're not growing tomatoes, because they know that 20-year-old kids don't grow tomatoes. 20-year-old kids don't go in a hydroponic store, spend $500 on equipment and grow tomatoes. Especially if they got AC/DC jackets on, eh?
And the seeds? Just check the catalog. Mail order from Holland. The Dutch produce more than tulip bulbs. In Holland, marijuana and seed farming is legal. In Canada, the seeds arrive discreetly by mail.
The equipment used in this particular operation was of top quality.
The trend towards hydroponic marijuana has also boosted potency. This RCMP evidence tape was shot in a Surrey, BC grow room, where according to the police, the most potent dope anywhere in the world was grown. What has made indoor pots so powerful is a method called sensimilla, which means without seeds. Only female plants are cultivated.
And their flowers, the bud that smokers want, are loaded with a hormone called THC, which gives the high.
Approximately 3 pounds were taken from the 41 mature plants. The quality was quite high.
Sergeant John Abbott is the RCMP's expert on marijuana.
THC is essentially the intoxicant in
Yes,
marijuana.
Yes, tetrahydrocannabinol.
What levels of THC are usual in marijuana grown outdoors?
As a cultivation expert, I have seen an average potency, even of the best imported strains, of around 7 to 8% THC.
So you're talking about marijuana imported from Thailand,
Thailand, Mexico, Colombia, Jamaica. The indoor species have gone as high as 22% tetrahydrocannabinol.
22%. So in other words, 300% the potency that you would find in an average shipment of some other origin.
In comparison to the marijuana produced in British Columbia in the 1970s, which had an average potency of 1%, this was 22 times as potent.
Do you go to pains to keep this a secret, to keep this location?
Abbott once chased outdoor marijuana growers. Now he and other drug squad cops have had to learn about indoor cultivation.
This really could be somebody's basement. It's that kind of space.
To do that, they've got a federal license to grow marijuana for the RCMP.
Grow room here, we have plants in a vegetative cycle.
So they're more or less just starting out at this point.
That's correct. And in
As
here,
opposed to these guys who are well along.
These are in the final stage of growth, in the flowering state, and these are the ripening buds. In this area, it contains the highest potency levels of THC.
The experience Abbott and his fellow officers gain here will be used to give expert testimony, interpreting for the courts what they've found on their raids.
And if somebody says to you, look, I grow this stuff in my basement because I don't want to have to go out on the street and deal with the criminal element, with the traffickers.
I've never seen, apart from 1% of all the grow labs I've been involved in, which ranges in the number of a couple of hundred, a case where a cultivator is growing for his own use. As a matter of fact, the trend is that the more expertise from each crop that he gains, the larger a cultivator he becomes. And the greater the profit margin he is trying or attempting to achieve.
But you see a guy who's doing this in his own basement in Vancouver as being distinctly different than the farmer in the highlands of Thailand who may be growing it.
Yes, I do. The cultivator here in British Columbia is nothing more than a drug trafficker. The cultivator in a poverty-stricken source country might be yielding a few dollars per pound for his product to keep his family alive. That's entirely a different case than it is here in North America.
There's an irony here. Back when Tom was in the business, the only way he could sell his homegrown marijuana was to say it had been imported.
At that time, what they did is they would pass it off as anything they really wanted to. But at that time, a lot of the indoor marijuana wasn't available to the market, so they would call it something exotic, Thai weed, Hawaiian, something along those lines.
And it came from a basement in Vancouver.
It came from a basement in Vancouver.
But any day might bring unwelcome visitors, though real police raids are not exactly like Miami Vice.
Hi, Vancouver Police. We have a warrant to search your house for narcotics.
And the treatment by the courts is usually lenient too. Few growers go to jail. Most simply get a fine of just a few $1,000s, along with the loss of their crop, the equipment, and a considerable amount of stress. Tom, who was sentenced to 6 months and served 3, says he would never do it again.
Once you start getting 20 lights in a house and your hydrometer is spinning around like a turbine jet, somebody knocks on the door, your heart goes through your throat, you don't even have the nerve to crawl to the window to see who it might be because all you can think of, it's the cops, it's the cops. And then you crawl to the window and you look out and some little girl guide is trying to sell you some cookies.
Did that happen to you?
That actually happened. And you lose a year off your life, eh?
Back in Port Moody, the tenant of this house has just come home to a nasty surprise. The police are waiting to ask him a few questions. Downstairs, there's enough marijuana for a couple of 1,000 cigarettes. The war on drugs is now being fought in Canada's basements.